I'm Dean. I'm the dad.
I'm Laura. I'm the mom.
And I'm Krysta. I'm the daughter.
And together we are Family Plot.
Be honest with us. Would that ever get old with you guys on this show?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Well, welcome back. We've packed up Mr. Mouse and sent him on vacation.
Oh, yeah,
He went.
That's how we told you the story.
Well, first of all, if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for your kind attention to our show. We love having you. If you're new, welcome. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, maybe you want to consider sharing the show with your friends on social media. If you don't, we just ask that you keep it to yourself. Okay? All righty.
We now have over 100 episodes that you can go back and enjoy at your leisure.
Exactly. Including last week's special retrospective episode. We've got a lot of great episodes for you. Plus, we're a PG-13 podcast that covers history, true crime, paranormal, and folklore. What more could you want, really?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much sort of a jack of all trades, even, you could say.
Sort of. Except none of us are named Jack.
Well,
Who said?
You know.
I know your name, and Jack is not part of it.
Yeah.
Hey, there could be a ghost in this house named Jack.
But between all of us.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, wait.
Well, maybe J.A.K. we could. Laura, Ronald, Dean.
Think about the full names.
Dean. What?
Think about the full name.
I am. There's no C, though. There's no C.
Yeah, you're right.
No C.
It's a little surprising, but yeah, there's not a C.
There's no C.
Oh, you have a J.
I do have the J, yes. No C.
There's no sea, there's no ocean, but there is a lake.
Well, yes. Yeah.
And we do have a view of it.
Yeah, well, it's more of a pond, but yeah.
Also, if you want to throw a few bones our way because you like what we do, we got a couple ways you can do that. You, of course, there's Patreon, which gives you a variety of options that you can donate to us for.
And boy, could we use some donations to feed this buddy. She is so hungry.
Oh, yeah.
She acts like she's never eaten anything.
Yes. Also, she likes to act like, she's never been given food ever before. And which is weird because she's kind of a chubby bunny. She's cute,
She's a little chunky. But
she's kind of a little chubby bunny. Probably because that bunny is happy. She's so happy seeing all of us go by. Like we're her family. It's weird, but I didn't know bunnies could emulate with people like that. But she's.
Oh yeah, some bunnies are free roaming and wander the house like cats and dogs.
Like when I get like a place to myself, if I go out, am able to get out of here, which I don't know if I'd be able to because y'all like dragging me by the leg.
You just turned 13. Slow down.
Yeah, yeah. Your brother's 20 and he still hasn't moved out, so take a deep breath. Think about it.
I want to let a bunny roam around the house.
Well, and I almost forgot to mention Buy Me a Coffee is another way you can do it. Patreon is a monthly donation, but you can turn it off if you need to or whatever. Buy Me a Coffee is one time. So whatever way you go, we're happy with it. Now, let me tell you a little about tonight. Tonight, we travel back in time to Boston in the early 20th century with one of the strangest disasters we've ever heard of. Imagine, if you will, a title.
Was
Mom.
The puns are punishing tonight.
yes.
Imagine, if you will, a tidal wave of molasses, a literal sea of dark, sticky syrup bearing down on you. That is exactly what happened in an episode of history called the Great Molasses Disaster. But before we get into that,
Yes, we must, before we get into the thick of things, talk to Krysta about
I love it. Can you do this all the time? I like that. Even though the puns sort of kill my soul a little bit, I think our listeners will love it. What, Krysta?
Why do you think we pick on you?
Because I pick on you.
It's our expertise.
Oh, like mother, like daughter.
Krysta, with your weird facts, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone.
You can see them?
Yeah, I have
That is
X-ray vision.
impressive.
I have X-ray vision.
Awesome.
Great to see all your beautiful faces today.
You put some clothes on.
I was going to say, hopefully no one's listening while they're in the shower or anything.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Crystalline.
Damn, darn, that was fast. Okay.
Escalated quickly.
That escalated quickly, yeah. So today's facts are about molasses from, so, thank you, Wikipedia.
Yes, thank you, Wikipedia.
Thanks, Wikipedia.
Yeah. Alright. Fact number 1 about molasses.
Yes.
Molasses is part of the sugar. It gives brown sugar its color and clumpiness. It has more vitamins and minerals than regular sugar, which is probably why it tastes so bad.
It doesn't taste bad. What do you mean?
I've never had it.
You've had brown sugar.
And she's talking about molasses, I think, which is a little bitter to go with its sweet. But I mean, it's not meant to be consumed on its own, I don't think.
No, not on Pop-Tarts either, I'll tell you that much.
Okay, anyway, go ahead.
One of several uses for molasses is to make ethanol, the active ingredient in alcoholic beverages. And also used in
Munitions.
Munitions are weapons.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're weapons. Wow. I have so much to say about that.
Like what?
Weapons are bad, you say?
Weapons are bad.
Only use weapons if somebody's trying to attack you. Number 3. Molasses is 40% more dense than water.
Yes. So
it sinks.
well, it does sink in water, yes, but it's also, because of its weight, it's got more potential energy than water, right? Am I thinking that correctly?
Not a clue.
I think so.
You just bypassed me on the smart scale.
You just bypassed me on the smart scale. I felt that on a spiritual level, Mom.
Girl, I know it.
That's me anytime Blue and Dimmix try to make sense of anything. I'm just like...
That's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight.
Who's in my... Sorry.
Okay, listen. Both of these episodes, the last episode and this episode, is going to be copyrighted if we don't chillax.
You're right. We need to Rein it in a little.
Yeah, at this rate, Mr. Mouse will be back before the end of the episode, and we don't want that.
Mr. Mouse can't come back.
I don't want to hear another whisker about what he has to say.
You mean you're not interested in any more of my tales?
Well, you can't blame Mr. Mouse for wanting to hang out with us. I mean, he's only been the official ambassador of where he lives for years and years and years. Maybe it's nice hanging out with a family that doesn't want to see him, do tricks and entertain the kids.
I want to see him do tricks and entertain the kids.
Oh, that'll keep him away.
Nice.
Crystalline, moving on.
Yeah. Fact number 4. In addition to sugarcane and sugar beets, molasses can also be made from fruits like pomegranate. I've been playing this game called Stardew Valley, and
now look who's trying to get us copyrighted.
My sister and my brother are trying to date this one dude in the game, and he likes pomegranates. So every time I see the word pomegranates, I'm just like, ooh, I want to play the game now.
I see.
Yeah, pomegranate molasses is very common in Middle Eastern countries.
Yeah, they have more pomegranates.
Sounds like you could spread it on a piece of toast and eat it for breakfast.
Probably.
But I am no big fan of bitter.
Well, pomegranate molasses, as I understand it, is not bitter. It's just pomegranate seeds, a little lemon, and I forget what else. Maybe sugar, a little sugar, boiled down together until it's a consistency of syrup.
That sounds good. I'd try that. Step number 5. Molasses is a key ingredient in the distillation of rum. Is used to make dark rye bread. Is used to make gingerbread, especially in the U.S., and is often used to make barbecue sauce. Which, oh my gosh, if you don't know me, ooh, you about to know me.
Crystalline might have some barbecue sauce running in her blood vessels. We're not quite sure if it's a possibility.
I might be made of barbecue sauce, and if I am, well, shoot, guess I've been a cannibal my whole life. Because barbecue sauce is better than ketchup, in my case. And I like ketchup.
Oh, I would much rather use barbecue sauce than ketchup 90% of the time, even for fries. I like the tang of it. I like the zing of it. Sometimes I like a sauce with a little heat to it. Yeah, good stuff.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Listen to all those claps our Krysta got. Oh, yeah, because they only happen in my headphones.
I wish. Okay, well, now we got the bitter taste of molasses off our tongues. How about we get started in the episode and actually bathe in it this time?
Okay. The date that we're discussing.
Dip into the situation, if you will.
Yeah.
The date we're discussing, January 15th, 1919. So let's start with the temperature.
Is that where the phrase, like molasses in January, comes from?
No, I don't think so. At least I didn't find that in my research. But I mean, it's a fairly common thing that molasses in cold weather moves slower because it's got a greater viscosity.
Right. Okay.
And it's pretty viscous anyway. So, but let's start with the temperature. It was 37 degrees Fahrenheit on that day, or if you prefer, 19 degrees Celsius. Now, I can't find info in the wind chill, but it being Boston in winter, there was almost certainly a wind chill of 5 degrees or greater. That's important because water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So we're talking pretty cold. Now, as the day went on, it began to heat up and eventually rising above 40 degrees.
Okay.
So the temperature has a lot to do with what we're discussing.
Right.
So the previous day, at a place called the Purity Distilling Company, located at 529 Commercial Street in Boston's charming North End neighborhood, a ship had warmed up molasses to reduce its viscosity and transferred it via pipe to a large holding tank. Now, the tank held up to 2.3 million gallons of molasses. Once that molasses had been piped into the tank, people began talking about how they could hear the metal groaning for a while, right? For hours. So, as it began to heat up, January 15th, 1919, it's also important to remember something else, too. It's a scientific principle. Cold things contract, hot things or warm things expand. Cold things contract, hot things expand. So,
Just off the top of my head, asking that question, for several sites on the internet, it does actually state that the American idiom for something that is painfully slow, its history is related to the Great Molasses Flood of January 15th, 1919.
awesome. I did not know that. Thank you for providing some extra facts.
Absolutely.
And I gave you some claps.
Claps.
Thank you.
Mind you, let's be clear. I gave her claps, not the clap.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right.
But he had to make a joke, too.
Yeah.
Or else it would just be a Mr. Mouse is gone.
So, now, like I said, people were hearing the metal strain, but apparently that was fairly common when they had just piped in fresh, warm molasses.
Sure.
So, as the heat began to rise on January 15th, the molasses began to expand, powered by the rising temperatures, as well as the residual heat from the molasses piped into it the day before. At around 12:30 p.m., the tank burst and collapsed with what those nearby described as a thunderclap-like bang. The molasses came out in a rush in a 25-foot-high peak at its zenith, moving at 35 miles an hour. A sticky, dense wave of molasses coasted through the North End neighborhood. It flattened buildings and covered animals and people indiscriminately. As the molasses was exposed to the chillier temperatures of Boston, it began to harden, which, of course, made rescuing those trapped in it much more difficult.
Oh, goodness.
Now, some scale here. 25 feet. I'm 5'8" or 5. I'm between 5'8" and 5'10", depending on who I'm lying to or trying to impress at the time. So we're talking, this is almost 5 times my height. We're talking, this is actually a little taller than a 2-story building, I think, at 25 feet. Because isn't a story like 12 feet? I guess 12 feet on the average. They couldn't be, it depends on the builder, I guess. But yeah, so, I mean,
according to the average house, the average height for a 2-story house is 16 feet.
Oh, so yeah, bigger than a 2-story house.
Yeah.
So just picture that for a moment, right? You're walking down the street and a wave of molasses.
As tall as what, a 3-story house then, if a 2-story house is
16 feet, rolling down the street at you.
Well, shoot, I'm dead because I'm 5'6".
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, at its peak, the wave was huge. Now, of course, it diminished as it went because even though there was 2.3 million gallons of molasses, it diminishes as it goes because there's nothing to keep it going. It's not like water from the bay.
There's nothing to keep it warm either. We're talking about January in Boston, and it was chilly.
Yeah, even at 40 degrees is not a
snowstorm, but it definitely was very cool.
Yeah. So it's diminishing as it goes, but still 25 feet is scary impressive for something like that. So
I'll be honest with you, I'd probably be sitting at my house being like, I wonder what's going on. Look at the news and I'll be like,
honey, it was 1919. There was no news.
oh, you're right.
well, there was the papers, but there wasn't TV news.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if there was radio news at that point. Maybe, could be.
No, I don't think, probably not. Not in 1919. The Titanic sunk in 1912.
I think so.
And I mean, they had like telegraph and stuff then, but they didn't have.
Yeah, I guess commercial radio hadn't really made its debut.
Yeah.
Or if it had, it was a brand new thing. Like, it was in its very infancy. All right, well, let's take a moment for a word from our sponsors, and then we'll get back into the thick of it.
Hey, honey.
Yes,
I just.
very nice. I love you.
I love you too. Also, radio became common in the 1920s.
Okay, so it might have just been really getting its start in 1919. So, the wave was so dense and powerful. Now, as we left, we have a 25-foot wave going of molasses, mind you. And remember what Krysta said, this wave is 40% more dense than water. So it's heavy.
Yeah.
It's thick. It's coming at everything. When it hits buildings,
And it's coming at things, and what's continuing to go is carrying things with it because it's sticky.
right. And like as it's hitting buildings, it's flattening them. It's that dense. Water will knock down buildings to some extent, but usually what it does is it sort of sweeps through the bottom, and if it has enough force to sweep through and knock down pilings or whatever, that'll take down a building. But molasses is thicker, so it's like if it's moving at 35 miles an hour, it's like a car running through the first floor of your house. It's going to tear the bottom out of it. So it was so dense and powerful, this wave, it snapped the steel struts holding up the elevated train platform.
That's pretty serious.
Yeah, that's powerful. Now, as the wave diminished, it revealed a neighborhood in devastation. Remember that while most people traveled by horse then, I'm not even sure cars were a thing, but most people traveled by horse.
Very, very, they were still pretty new.
Oh, actually, yeah, I do know. They were a new thing, but still not everybody had them. It was probably at least
like a toy for the rich kind of thing still, even in the early late 1900s.
So houses and buildings had been crushed. A fire station had been knocked off of its foundation, causing the second floor to crumble into the first. That's how powerful this wave was. Yeah. Now, the Boston Globe tells of Antonio D'Estasio, who was walking home from school with his 4 sisters. He and his sister Maria were picked up by the wave and quickly separated. Antonio rolled on top of the wave, almost like he were surfing, before the wave diminished and pushed him along the ground, rolling him like a pebble. He heard his mother calling his name, but his mouth was filled with sticky goo and he couldn't answer her. He passed out, and when he came to, he was surrounded by 3 of his 4 sisters. Maria, on the other hand, was not so lucky. She lost her life in the sticky wave. And all they'd been doing is walking home from school, which... The Boston Post reported that molasses waist deep covered the entire street and swirled and bubbled about the wreckage. Here and there struggled to form. Whether it was animal or human being was impossible to tell. Only an upheaval, a thrashing about in a sticky mess showed where any life was. Horses died like so many flies on sticky paper. The more they struggled, the deeper than the mess they were ensnared. Human beings, men and women, suffered likewise. So, probably the initial wave receded in like 20 minutes or so. It probably took like about 20 minutes to wash out to the point it was gonna, right? Sure. And in that time, the North End neighborhood was devastated. As I said, buildings crushed. The fire station was knocked off its foundations. There were guys who had been downstairs in the fire station playing cards. So when the whole thing was swept up off of its foundation, they went with it. And they were literally trapped in this crumbling room. And swimming basically in molasses. One of the firemen died because he just couldn't keep on top of it anymore.
Right.
So, and before I get too much deeper in this, I got to say, I found out about this when I was 12. There used to be a magazine. It was like an older version of Highlights, if you remember that. Yeah. When I was in school, there was a magazine, I don't even know if it's still a thing, called Highlights. It was for younger kids, and it had little articles in it and whatever. But this was like a teeny version of that. Teeny as in teen, made for teens as opposed to being small. Yeah. But this was like a teen version of that, and it had the story about it. And I was amazed that nobody had ever stopped in my history class and said, hey, let's talk about this weird thing that happened with a bunch of molasses in Boston. Because I felt like the loss of life and the things that had happened were just amazing to me, because my brain just literally could not conceive of it.
Right. Now, this isn't even related to this, but I'd like to ask a question.
Okay. Ask away.
Like, it's not even remotely related, but I want to go to the museum and see dinosaur bones, because I was just like typing, and I was like trying to find some cute molasses lizard. Like, I thought maybe it'd be cute if somebody had made a lizard and it was like kind of, but it ended up coming up with a dinosaur that had been newly discovered in 2021.
Cool. Well, I think they have some at the Prairie Fire Museum over in Kansas. I think. But really, the best place to see dinosaur bones is probably the Smithsonian. And I would love to take you there. I don't know when or how I would ever be able to do so. But fortunately, the Smithsonian occasionally sends some of its stuff on tour, so you can go see it around the country. So maybe I'll look for that. Because, yeah, I would like to look at some dinosaur bones, too.
Yeah. That's why when we were over and we were going on vacation, that's why I wanted to go visit the dinosaur place. I was like, ooh, that'd be freaking cool to do dinosaur stuff. It
would.
And it probably would have been better than the zoo place we went to. Not trying to put any shade on that zoo place, but...
No. That place deserved a little shade, though. I mean, it was a decent experience, but it was also kind of like I kind of felt bad for the animals. Like
I did as well.
You know. So you didn't give us a death count, so I was over here looking it up while you guys were talking about that. So it was kind of a blessing. I mean, it definitely could have been a much larger loss of life.
Yeah,
Only 21 people were killed.
Yeah, it's not like the triangle.
They said they estimated that the wave moved 35 miles per hour and was 25 feet high and 160 feet wide at its outset.
Yeah. It was reported at the time as being between 15 and 25 feet high.
Now, there were quite a few vehicles that were there to assist. I'm sure there were quite a few horses and stuff, but there were quite a few vehicles there in the area as well. I'm looking at some of the old pictures from.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think at the time it was probably still about 50-50 between people who had cars and people who had horses, and actually maybe it was just a little less. Now, I hadn't seen that picture. Yeah, send me that. We'll use it as a cover photo. Now, first on the scene after the wave subsided, the first on the scene were 119 cadets and their commanding officer from the USS Nantucket, a training ship of the Boston Maritime Academy, although it wasn't called that at the time. They were quickly joined by police, the Red Cross, and Army and Navy personnel. People pulled others from the molasses, shot trapped horses, and tended to the injured. The final toll was 21 dead and over 150 injured. And some of the people that were doing the rescuing were nurses from the Red Cross who literally dived into the molasses to rescue people. Cleanup involved using a fireboat, and cleanup took months. Let me be clear. Not months. Cleanup took weeks. It involved using a fireboat with a hose to use salt water to break up and blast away the sticky molasses and sand to absorb it. The bay was brown until summer.
Hey, this is Kate from Ignorance Was Bliss. In a circumstance that should surprise absolutely no one, I'm running late. This is my life lately. It's my new normal. It's chaos. It's fine. I'm fine, for real. But I still wanted to take a minute and congratulate Dean, Laura, and Krysta for 100 episodes. Every milestone matters. Every download is awesome, and every new episode is important. So, congratulations. You guys, you did a lot of work. You're regular at producing, you're good at recording, and I really enjoy the family chaos you bring to your show. So please, please keep it up. And like I said, congratulations. You matter.
Yeah. I almost forgot to mention, when the wave first, popped out, ahead of it was a mass of air. It was pushing air ahead of it, and that air was carrying debris and blasting people or throwing people, and it even threw a truck into the bay, which, yeah, that is some force for you. So, as I said, cleanup took weeks. The bay was brown until summer, which the Boston Harbor's pretty big. Furthermore, in the days, weeks, and months following, rescuers, victims, and sightseers had trudged through so much molasses and spread it to so much of the city that papers at the time claimed that everything a Bostonian touched was sticky. And according to our dear friend Kate from the Ignorance Was Bliss podcast, if you go to the North End neighborhood to this day and it gets hot, the area still smells like molasses. Now, I've heard people say I've seen online where people say it's an urban legend. It's not like that, but I trust Kate over, people I've never met.
Sure.
So if she tells me, and she lived there, so if she says she could smell the molasses, then I'm going to guess you could probably smell the molasses. Maybe not everybody. Maybe, people are kind of variable in their ability to smell things. So maybe, some people wouldn't, but certainly some people do.
Right.
So let's talk about the aftermath a little bit, because this was the crazy part to me. Like the initial event was bad. But to me, the aftermath is almost worse. So here's the deal. The people injured began to file suit against the U.S. Industrial Alcohol Company, which was the parent company of Purity Distilling,
Sure.
for what they described as shoddy construction of the tank.
Fair enough.
These individual suits were eventually combined into a single suit, a class action suit, basically.
Of course.
Now, the U.S. Industrial Alcohol Company, however, had other ideas.
Well, sure.
They claimed the tank had been sabotaged by Italian anarchists.
Okay.
Well, 1919, anarchists were a thing, and people being crazy. There was one person who apparently had called Purity Distilling and threatened to blow up the tank. But so this led to a trial. The trial lasted over 5 years.
That's a big trial.
Yeah, imagine being a juror on that trial.
Jeez.
Greetings and salutations, Family Plot listeners. It is I, Mr. Dark of the Dark Ride with Mr. Dark, and this is a Dark Production Company, here to greet you all and wish you a very happy 100th episode to everyone over there at the Plot. Dean, Laura, and of course, dear Krysta, to whom I also wish a belated happy birthday. Your hard work has paid off and the show is doing wonderfully. While I'm over here putting the finishing touches on the carnival and pandemonium, I do look forward to working together with you soon, plotlings. Plotters? Plot people. You get the idea. Keep up the good work. I'll see you all very soon. Congratulations!
So, yeah, the trial lasted over 5 years, and the closing arguments alone took 11 weeks. Yeah, very.
So what happened?
Well, as I said, the U.S. Industrial Alcohol Company claimed it was sabotage. So the prosecution was forced to get witnesses to testify that none of the metal showed any signs of being exploded. They didn't find any bomb parts left over, whatever. While, the U.S. Industrial Alcohol Company had hired experts to testify that, no, this very easily could have been sabotage, and for whatever reason. So really, it was just our experts versus their experts.
He said, yep, got it.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been he said. They didn't have lawyers back then. But anyway.
Right. Anyway, long story short, eventually the judge was like, it took the side of the public, that the U.S. Industrial Alcohol Company was ordered to pay over $600,000 in damages, which is roughly $8 million in today's money.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby, but
Dang.
I wouldn't want to live through the one to get through to the other, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, how many people were involved in that lawsuit? Even at $600,000, I can't imagine it went super far with as many people as were just injured. You're looking.
It's 150.
There were 121 people just injured.
Right, and you know, plus you've got 21 dead. So and probably a lot of relatives who are either suing for the posthumous or suing for the injured.
Well, and then all of the buildings and everything that were just completely decimated. Their people's businesses and homes and belongings. So I can't imagine that it went real far. I mean, even within getting that, and was the company even able to pay that? I mean, when did the stock market crash? Because this has got to be right around the Great Depression. I don't. Can y'all tell I don't know my history real well?
Easy enough. Okay. Real quick, let's look up the Great Depression and see when it started. Because, yeah, it seems to me you're probably right. It was very close to that. I just...
Okay, it was still about... They still had... Well, no, because if it lasted 5 years, the trial lasted 5 years. This happened in 1919, so the trial ended in 1924, and the Great Depression was between 1929 to 1939. So, literally, I mean, these people were lucky if they got that recompense before...
Yeah.
Even before the stock market crashed. So, can you imagine? My goodness.
Yeah, well, but let's say there's 2,000 people suing, roughly. Mm-hmm. 2,000 split, 6,000 to 600,000 divided by 2,000 is still a fairly tidy sum.
Fair enough.
And adjusted for the time period, probably wasn't too bad. Now, They may have turned around and lost that 5 years later in the Depression, right. But I think they were okay.
Sure.
Initially. Now, just the thought of that amazes me. Just the idea of, and at the time, even after the trial, there was something of a mystery about what happened. And it took years for someone to work out, no, it was just a temperature thing. Yeah. And it caused which still made it Purity Distilling's fault, because they either didn't have enough tanks or they weren't smart enough to realize that if you max out a tank when it's cold, it's going to be overmaxed when it's hot.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's easy. Hindsight's 20/20, as they say, you know?
Yeah, I know, but I mean, well, it's like the Hyatt. Like,
right.
The thing about the Hyatt was so many people had passed on that design without really investigating it, that at the time, if I remember right, someone had said that a first-year engineering student, if he had taken the time to look at it, could have seen that it was going to fail.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if engineers at the time could have figured out, hey, if you fill this up with cold molasses and then it gets hot, it's not going to hold at all. You're going to have an issue. Mm-hmm. And maybe they didn't think it would fail explosively the way it did, but, having the seams pop on your water tower full of molasses and have it, all this sticky goo bubbling out of it, is going to be an issue. So, Krysta, you're in Boston. Big wave of molasses comes rolling at you, wipes out your business. What do you think?
I mean, at that point, there's nothing more I can do about it.
Well, I guess what I'm wanting to know is what your thought is on the whole situation.
I feel like the business owners should definitely have, before doing any of this, experimentation and research is the best idea anyone could have before creating anything. I feel like the owners should have taken closer examination before actually producing anything with their business.
That is always true. Yep.
Because if you don't take close examination and you don't pay attention, precautions. If you don't take close precautions as well, that could all end up being very, very well the reason why it went all over the city. They didn't take close enough precautions, and they didn't experiment with it either. So it's kind of just like.
Babe, any final thoughts?
I mean, I think everything that. I think it's just another of. It was really a time when industry was growing at exponential rates, and everything was just so excitable and exciting. That's why these tragedies happen. I think it goes into the same bubble as the Titanic and, other great kind of disasters of the early 20th century, that there was so much happening so fast that we just we didn't think about, we didn't take the time to be cautious because there were so many things to explore and learn and know, and they were just all at our fingertips right then. And I think those, while we can look back now and say, oh, well, they should have done this, they should have done that, I think those are the building blocks that brought us to where we are now, that we have the government fail-safes, that we have the laws, that we have the legalities, that those things are in place to try to keep those things from happening going forward. So, I mean, obviously, my goodness, what an awful, horrible, horrible event. And for those poor people who were in the middle of that. But, I mean, everything happens for a reason. Those lessons that were learned that day by the people that survived. And so, I mean, it's a good piece of history to know, because it's kind of out there, and it's not something that everybody talks about. It's not something I didn't know about it until you started telling me about this, and I didn't correlate the saying, like molasses in January, until you said the date, and I went, wait. So I mean, these things, they connect together, and I think the more that we learn about them, the more that maybe if we start paying attention to things that have happened in the past, we can start putting some puzzle pieces together to try to
figure out our future.
Be a little more safeguarding of our future, because right now I feel like we're kind of in the same space. The world's a different place right now, and everything is just popping and growing, and and people are inventing new, amazing, crazy things constantly. Average, everyday people are going into space. The world is at each other's throats, and people are dying or becoming stars overnight, and you don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. So, I mean, I just think that we need to take it as a reminder.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I feel like another thing that they kind of got something, couldn't get anything off of was the internet, because they didn't have the internet.
Oh, yeah.
And the internet is very helpful when it comes to examination, research, and precautions. Because if you want to find those things out, you have to experiment a lot, and the people back then just didn't really. They had the time, they just didn't know. They didn't know if they had enough time to do things they needed to do, so they just wanted to get it into production before even doing any examination or...
Well, also at the time, I mean, businesses were a lot more free to kind of do as they pleased. So there wasn't as many regulations that they had to follow. And so, I mean, like, that's what led to the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire, which I think was in New York or Chicago.
I think that was back then as well.
But
so closer to that time.
Yeah, but basically what led to it was like they had locked the doors from the outside to make sure nobody snuck out early, because, you know, it wasn't enough that they paid them. They had to treat them like children too. Yeah. And it was that
some of them were children. They actually took in like smaller children, ages like 10, and they made them work and paid them a small amount so they keep their mouths shut, but they'd work at the same time.
Gotcha.
And see how the fire started? It literally, they dropped a cigarette. Somebody dropped the cigarette on some fabric, and then it started spreading.
Yeah. So, like I said,
like that kind of contributed to the no smoking rule in a lot of places.
No,
because
that
didn't come around till
probably 2000. I think people still smoked in grocery stores and stuff in the 80s.
Yeah, I was going to say.
They were still smoking in Red X here in Riverside until probably, the 90s almost.
Yeah. So that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. Follow us on Twitter. Join our Facebook group. Did I miss something? Oh. Join our Facebook group. Special thanks, as always, to Bill Barrett, the man who provides our theme music. And if you need theme music or music for a project, Bill's your guy. Just reach out to him at Bill Barrett, and I will spell that last name BEHRENDT at sbcglobal.net. He will happily write you up something that will have people snapping their fingers and tapping their toes. Also, thanks to Paige Elmore of Reverie True Crime for our artwork. Thank you very much, Paige.
Yes, as much as we love Paige's artwork, I am in the process of trying to digitize Crystalline's freeform art that she did, new art for the podcast.
Cool.
And that may come to live as a new icon for the podcast, because it was done by our Crystalline, and it's kind of
awesome. Yeah, no.
It's super awesome. So.
And join us next week as we do an episode that Krysta picked this topic out.
I love this topic.
It's the creepypasta of back rooms. What's that? Have to wait till next week. Talk to you then. Bye.
Bye.